Okay, so mine is the Playfair Cipher, and this is a form of block cipher, and block ciphers don't have a limit on the number of characters you can use in a message, so you can send as long as a message as you want. And it encrypts and decrypts messages that are 2 characters at a time. This was the first practical digraph substitution cipher, and it was invented in 1854 by Charles Wheatstone, but the name came from Lord Playfair, who promoted the use of the Playfair cipher. This cipher was used by British forces in World War I for tactical purposes, and also by Australians in World War II, and it was used to protect important secrets during combat. And the nice thing about this one is that it doesn't require any special equipment or technology. So we're going to start with the encryption. So for this, you need a keyword, and you can use any keyword you want. So I obviously just use keyword for the keyword. And then you choose a message that you want to send, and I just did the message for message. And so what you do with this is you take your message and you put it all together without any spaces. So it would become like that. And then anywhere that there's double letters, so for example, there's the 2 S's that are together, you don't want those together, so you have to put an X in between them. So then it would become then your next step is to separate this into groups of 2. So then that would become, you'd have the TH together, EM, ES, XS, AG, and then you have an E, but you don't want that E by itself because they come in groups of 2, so you would have to add an X on the end of that. So then your next step is, in order to encrypt this message and decrypt it, you need this 5x5 grid here. And so this is where your keyword comes in handy. You have to fill in the grid with the word that you chose. So I would just fill it in with keyword. And then the rest of the squares are just the rest of the alphabet, but the letters can't be used twice. So any letter that you used in here, you just skip it. Also, there is only 25 squares inside this grid, and so 1 letter has to be taken out. And in the Playfair Cipher, they always take out the letter J. So we would start and go A, B, C, but we already have a D. We already have an E, so we'd have to put an F, a G, an H, an I. We skip J. We already have a K, L, M, N. We have an O, P, Q. We have an R already. S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So this would be what your grid would look like. So then we'd go down to our little thing down here, and this is where we would put the groups of 2 in. So we'd put TH, EM, ES, XS, AG, EX. So how this is going to work is that we're going to be encrypting these 2 letters at a time. So, but there are a few rules to this. So these are the rules. If these letters, so we're talking about the groups of 2, if both letters are in the same row, you have to switch them with the letter on the right of them. If a letter is on the end of a row, switch it to the letter at the beginning of the row. If the letters are in the same column, replace them with the letter below it. If the letter is at the bottom of a column, you have to replace it with the letter at the top. If letters aren't in the same column or the same row, you have to create a rectangle around them. With the two letters will be on the opposite corners of each other in the rectangle, and you will be replacing them with the letters on the opposite side of them. So these rules are kind of confusing, but it'll make more sense as I'm going through these. So the first two letters that we have are T and H. So we find these on the grid. T and H are right here. So these aren't in the same row or the same column, which would mean we have to box these up. So if we imagine that there's a box around these, this would be in the corner of it and this would be in the top corner of it. So we'd have to replace them with the other corners. So the T would become a V and the H would become an F. So then we just write that underneath here. So then the next letters we have are E and M. So here's the E and here's the M. Same deal as this one. We'd have to box them up, make a rectangle, and switch them to the other side. So it would become a K and an N. So then the next letters are E and S. E and S, same thing. So this one, the E would become an O and the S would become an N. The next letters are an X and an S. And same thing, we'd have to switch them. So it'd be Z, Q. Then an A and a G. So these are right here. It'd be a D and an H. And then E and our X are the last ones that we have. So the E would become a W and the X would become a U. So then our message that we encrypted that we'd send out would now be VFKNONZQDHWU. So this would be the message that we'd be sending out. So now, if we're going to decrypt the message, so let's say we just got this message, we'd do the same process, but opposite, basically. So here's our message. I already wrote it down, and the grid would be the same as before. So we'd take the message and we'd split it up into twos again, and then bring the twos down here. So this is where we'd be starting again. But so the rules for decrypting now are, if the letters are in the same row, you're going to be replacing them with the letter on the left instead of the letter on the right. If the letter's at the beginning of a row, you're going to be replacing it with the end of the row. If the letters are in the same column, you're going to be replacing them with the letter above them. If the letter is at the top of the column, you're going to be replacing it with the letter at the bottom. And if they aren't in the same row or column, you're going to make a rectangle around them and then replace it with the opposite corners again. So if we're decrypting these, we'll take V and F. They're right here, so then they'd have to change to H and T. Then K and N would replace with M and E. And then O and N would replace with E and S. Z and Q would replace with X and S. D and H would replace with A and G. And then W and U would replace with X and E. So then the message that you'd have is so you'd have this back where we started. Then you just take out all the X's, and that would give you the original message that we had.